Hey friends, welcome to my channel. Check it out. It's like Christmas came early for me. My name is Lynn and I'm really excited. This is going to be my first look at the Spellbinders Platinum Scout. And big thank you to Spellbinders for sending me this. As you may or may not know, I recently did a first look at Sizzix, their new Big Shot video, and I reached out in all honesty to Spellbinders to see if they would be interested in sending me a scout so that I could do a review on this too. Part of it is because I really want to offer a comparison and compare and contrast of the various different die cutting machines. And I feel like the Scout is one that could be a really nice machine, especially for beginner crafters, because it is a nice price point. It's going to be, I think, a very reliable machine if it's anything like the full-size Platinum, which I do have. I've got the Platinum when it was released under Fun Stamper's Journey. So I have the kind of the OG. I don't have the new updated Platinum that has this look and feel to it these days. And I opted to request the Scout because I really feel like this is a mini but mighty machine, and so I kind of want to sort of see for myself if it has all the die cutting power as the original Platinum that I'm used to. And the other thing that's really nice is that it's small, so that I can, if I'm die cutting, I can actually put it on screen, and you can see, you know, especially with different techniques and stuff, sometimes it's helpful to kind of see how you're lining up the dies. So as per usual with my first look videos, this is not meant to be a sort of comprehensive video in the sense that I'm going to tell you all the things that you need to know and my feelings about it, because I'm just using it for the first time. And the idea behind a first look video for me is to give you my out of box experience, my unvarnished opinions as I am using the machine for the first time. What I am going to endeavor to do is, I like that it comes with stuff already. So I'm going to start with doing all the basic things like die cutting. They even include a 3D embossing folder, which I think is kind of cool. I brought out this to use, which is also a 3D embossing folder, but with dies that you can use to cut. So I thought I might play with that as well. I didn't realize that I was getting the I guess this must be like a starter bundle, so that's kind of nice. And there's like a little tool set to go with that. I might have to read up on that because I'm not, everything is like attached and ready to go. This must be spares. So if I had to guess, this is a spare part to that, which I think is kind of cool. And I don't know where the Allen wrench comes in, so I might have to do a little bit of reading on that. And I am pretty familiar with how die cutting machines work, but let's look at the plate combinations, because really that's the thing that differs sometimes quite a lot between different die cutting machines. So here's our little starter pack. So we got a 3D, a more narrow 3D embossing folder, but it's long. So this is 8 3/4 of an inch. So you could put in like an 8.5 inch long strip in here. This is one of the things I feel is a little bit unique about the Platinum, and that is how long this plate is. So that's kind of interesting. I have the Anna Griffin Mini Empress, and it is by default, it's wider, but it's not as long. And if you wanted the longer, like more extended plates, you would have to buy that as an extra, like a different set, a complete set. So if I, let's see, let me bring up, this is the Anna Griffin, just so folks can get a little bit of a apples to apples comparison. So this is, the top plate is the Anna Griffin, one of their clear cutting mats. So Anna Griffin Mini Empress is about maybe, what is that, like maybe 3/4 of an inch wider. I can measure it for sure. So Anna Griffin plate is 4 1/4. The Spellbinders one, and I have a comparison video where I measure all of these, but for the sake of this one, this is 3 1/2. So yeah, 3/4 of an inch wider. And in terms of the length, you can see that's maybe 1 1/4 longer is the Spellbinders one. But let's measure it. So it's 7 1/2 is the Anna Griffin, and 9 inches is the Spellbinder, so 1.5 inches longer. So that's the difference in plate size between Spellbinders and the Anna Griffin Mini Empress. I did treat myself because I was shopping on scrapbook.com in anticipation of getting the Scout. I did get this, which I'm excited for. You cannot get at the moment, which I'm surprised by, but maybe because it's so uniquely sized, but you can't get a magic mat or a magnetic one with the for the Anna Griffin Mini Empress. And the reason why that surprises me is because I know scrapbook.com does sell the Anna Griffin Empress and the mini one as well. So this, I thought, would be a great buy for, but this is specialized too, because this is very specifically sized for the Scout. It fits perfectly. And to my knowledge, there isn't another die cutting machine that has this specific length to it. So let's set this aside. I won't use this to start, but I will use it in this video. So in terms of our plates, we have our base platform. We've got a B platform. We've got 2 cutting plates, a D adapter plate, an E embossing mat, and an F shim. That's a lot. There's a lot of things that are a variety of different thicknesses, all with the goal of giving you the right ideal amount of pressure to cut or to achieve whatever effect that you're looking for, be that cutting or embossing. So we've got our booklet here. Carefully remove from box, make sure there's nothing to hinder. This is a fold down, so one of the benefits of that is that if you're not crafting with it, or if you have to travel with it, it kind of folds up and it's nice and tidy. So if we look at the footprint, I'll just put it onto my glass mat here. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6.5 if you don't include the handle, by maybe 1, 2, 3.5. So 6.5 by 3.5 is roughly the footprint of the machine. But then, of course, you're going to need more room. So when you are crafting with it, you'll want to put this down. Now, interestingly, there are silicone feet, but these are not suctioned. They're just anti-slip kind of little grippies, but they don't actually suction to your work surface. In in a way, I think the Cuttlebug and I think the Beercraft has a nice suction effect when you open the platform, which helps it to like hold, like grip onto your surface. And in particular, if you're crafting on a glass craft mat, it just helps to hold it still while you crank through. So I'm going to be interested to see how steady this is because it's a pretty light machine. So the weight of it isn't going to keep it steady. And without the suction, I'm guessing I'm going to have to hold it steady with one hand while I crank it through with my other hand. That's just my guess. And so you want to, it says get ready to create. Spellbinders cutting dies allow you to cut, emboss, stencil, deboss, etc. And that's pretty much it. Let's make a sandwich. Follow the directions below depending on the type of die of cutting die or folder being used. All sandwiches should be stacked in the recommended order. Attempting to use an incorrect order of platforms or plates could damage the machine. Test with scrap paper first. That's really good advice. Somebody once told me, and I'll have to read everything through to see if this is the case, but I think somebody once told me that you have to prime your die cutting machines. I definitely remember this from a Crafty Fun with Friends live stream. And I don't see that as a step here. So, but I am reading kind of quickly, just kind of skimming. I'll probably read this a little bit more closely after the first look. But so far, I don't think I see anything that says you need to sort of prime your machine. And I'm looking for it because at the moment I can't exactly remember what we needed to do. Drop a comment if you know what I'm talking about and can help refresh my memory. All right. So lots of things that you can do with this. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that you get all of the various different plates. So if you're die cutting, they are recommending you cut. Oh, that's interesting. They are recommending that you cut with the cut side down. I tend to think that you get like a stronger cut if your die is face up, but it is interesting that they are recommending face down. And so look, 1, 2, 3 plates, your paper, your die, and then a 4th plate. So that's 4 plates to die cut. If you are, how to emboss a cut shape. Okay, so if you are using your die to do embossing, they do give you the squishy embossing mat. This is sort of that almost like a silicone rubber mat. And so it's A, B, your die face up, squishy mat, and the D plate. So everything is labeled A through F. And that way you can build up different thicknesses just depending on what it is that you need to do. So if you have a standard embossing folder, it's A, B, C with your folder under C. If you're doing a 3D embossing folder, it's just A and D. And so let's get started. Let's see what's what here. Okay. So one of the nice things is that you do have all of those sandwich combinations here. So if we are die cutting, it's A, B, C, paper, die, and then C. If you're embossing with your die, it's A, B, your die with the paper, E, and then D. And then these are your embossing sandwiches. So let's start off with some die cutting. So die cutting is going to be A, B, C, paper, die face down, and then another C. So I'm going to take my 2 C plates. It's always so hard to die cut into fresh, pristine cutting plates that have never been die cut into. Let's put our little tools to one side. Definitely don't want to lose that. And I am going to use the dies that actually came in the little starter pack. And I am going to use the embossing folder later also. So this is a good one that they included, because look at that sentiment. It's got some pretty thin lines, and you kind of get like a little bit of a layering effect too. You can layer the flowers, so it's kind of cute. All right, so let's get this out, and then we'll get some scrap paper. All right, so I'll use that to do the best wishes. And I will, let's do some flowers. So let's pick some purple, maybe a couple shades of purple. And let's start there. Oh, there's some leaves, so let's get some green. Just going through my scraps here to see what I've got. That could work. And is that the only green I have? I think that's the only scrap of green that I have, so we'll go with that. If I want some pink, maybe I can throw in some pink also. All right, I think that's a good start. So okay, so we want to cut face down, and I'm gonna go like that. So one of the things that I recommend is if you do a lot of die cutting, I would recommend switching the handle left to right, right to left. That way you're not always using the same hand, the same motions to die cut. And that way, you can kind of, especially if you do a lot of die cutting, you can kind of balance out whatever wear and tear this hobby is having on your body. So I'm just going to put this on the left and crank it through. And be prepared if you've never done any die cutting before. Just be prepared that you might hear, actually maybe I'll do this just so that you can see it go through. You might hear some crackling, and so I can't just crank it and not hold the machine because the machine is lifting. So I do have to steady it with one hand. Oh, it's so quiet. What has man, die cutting machines have really come a long way. I don't know if it's different plastic or if it's the machines, but it doesn't make that scary noise anymore. Now I don't have to give that warning whenever I do a die cutting machine review, because it's been a long time since I've before the Sizzix machine. It had been a while since I got a new machine. This is just the right amount of pressure. So you can kind of see this is my top plate. Still crystal clear. It hasn't taken an indentation or anything of the die. It's still flat, clean. It's like a little foggy just from having been sent through, but it's really not, scuffed at all. Or if it is, not much, not immediately perceptible. And this is the Spellbinders tool-in-one, which is good for weeding out these little bits in between. And then you've got a pokey, oh, well, that just fell out. So die cut beautifully. So you can kind of see, it's pretty thin. It's not, I've seen more delicate die cuts for sure, but this is not just an outline die. This is pretty detailed. So that's really great. Everything came out pretty clean. And then of course you've got, it's kind of etched where it cut, it's etched into the cutting plate. That's to be expected. If you've never die cut before, that can sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, did I just ruin this new product? And you haven't. It's that's just sort of how these work. And so let's get some flowers going. So ideally what you want to do over time is just cut, my recommendation is to just cut into one plate at a time and just rotate. So if it's like this, take note of the words and lettering. So sometimes rotate it, sometimes flip it over so that it's backwards. Try to cut into areas that haven't been cut into as much so that you really just spread out where you're cutting. So if I cut initially, it was like this, where cutting plate, you can read it, it's up the top. Then next time through, I'll maybe flip it to the other side. And instead of cutting in the same spot, I'll just put my dies somewhere else and cut into another spot. So for example, maybe, one of the nice things about having such a long platform is I could have done this all in one pass. So maybe I'll do that now. So let's say we want one color of flowers for the larger one. We want another color for the smaller one. And then I can do the leaves through at the same pass. Now, one thing that might kind of affect your performance a little bit is if you're using different thicknesses of cardstock like I am. So this was Spellbinders, I can tell because it's thick. This one might be cut cardstock, and this one might be Recollections. So these are all different thicknesses. Let's see, let me see if I can get a second. Maybe I can get a second. Oh yeah, I can get a second one out of this. So I'm just gonna get a second cut out of this, but I will tape it down just so that it doesn't shift. But this is so that you can see one of the nice things about having this longer plate is that you can cut multiple things. There's even a little, let's see, maybe I'll just use a little bit of yellow for that. These are the centers of the flowers, so let's go ahead. Let's use it. And that little bit of scrap is just enough. So, and I'll just slide that to the side. So I've got everything. It's probably no coincidence that you can fit everything in the little sampler die set. Everything and then some. Like I haven't even used the entire 9-inch plate. So I've got that loaded. Everything is cutting down, face down. Same with the top plate. I'll just rotate it. It matters not quite as much for your top plate to rotate it because it's really cutting. When you cut into your plate, you're making like literally little cuts into the plate, and then that tends to warp and curve your plates over time. And so it's more natural for me to roll it through this way. So you do have to hold this steady. That's for sure. All right. Look at everything, just all the die cuts falling out. Oh my gosh, this cuts so well. Everything is just popping right out. Now, of course, we would expect for everything. Oh, that shifted. So see what happened there? I think that moved a little bit. So this is why sometimes you do want to make sure that, especially if you're, operating on small area of scrap, you do want to make sure that you tape things down just so that you don't get partial cuts like I just did. Especially if you're running out or you're using a bit of scrap that you just are wanting to make sure you get the every little bit of it used up. So I'll just weed this out, see if there's anything. Like if you have dies like these, you do want to make sure that before you die cut with them again, that nothing is left. Like these little bits in here, you want to make sure to poke all of that out so that it's clean before it goes through again. Because if you have cardstock stuck in here, it may impact how well it cuts the next time you run that through. So I've got that. Let's put all of these back before I lose anything. And so with these, again, there's going to be a little hole that you can poke through. If you've never die cut before, it's like a little release, so that it releases your die cut out of the die. And then I'm just going to, I think I have, this did a partial die cut, but I did get 2 full leaves, and I cut a little bit extra. I think I have enough room to actually get another leaf or 2 out of this. So if I position this just right, so I like to just look at this from the back and just see, okay, I think I can get 2 small leaves if I position it right there. And this time I will actually tape it. And let's find a nice blank spot. Just so, oops, just put it there. Now, this is a long plate, and for just one little die like this, if you don't want to roll it through the entire 9 inches, what you can do is just roll it through a little bit and then back it out. Not necessarily because you feel like you need to roll it through 2 times for it to cut completely, but more because it's faster for it to just come right back out rather than go the entire 9 inches through. Okay, so that is our dies cut. And I feel like it did a really good job. Now, of course, that's everything that came in the packaging, so one would expect it to do really well with the things that come with. So so there's no surprise there. But check this out. So these have really lovely detail on them. The flowers. So the die did a really good job of cutting in all those little details. So that's pretty nice. I love that. These aren't necessarily dies that have a embossed feature to them. I might have to go find one just so that we can use the squishy mat and see what that looks like. But I'm gonna set all of these aside. Maybe I'll make something off camera with all of that, of course, to share. But I want to try some embossing. Now, I don't have too many of these, so there aren't. I think Spellbinders might be the only ones that do an embossing folder this size. So that is something to be aware of. And maybe more companies will start doing them, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to try to look in my stash now to see if I have a standard embossing folder so that we can see how that looks going through. So I'm going to have a little bit of a rummage and then be right back so we can test out the different embossing. Hey, so I found some stuff. I've got another 3D embossing folder. Okay, so one thing to note is that the one that came with is 3 inches wide, but the ones that I have purchased separately are the folder itself is more like 3 3/4. So hopefully it can fit through. Oh yeah, it can fit through. It hangs off. Okay, so if you look, it will hang off the platform a little bit, so you kind of have to center it so that you do get the full design. But it looks like it'll go through because the actual opening is wider than the plate, which is nice. Okay, so then I found another 3D one, like just one that you would purchase. Oh, this is pretty. This is a really nice sunflower one. And then I've got some standard ones. I must have picked these up on a bit of a sale. So I've got stripes, polka dots, diagonal stripes. So I think what I'm gonna do is we'll do some white. I cut a piece of purple for the one that came with, and I've just got some hammer mill 100-pound. I'll just do 2 of these because we'll do one that's stripy and one that's more curvy. We don't need to do 2 stripes. So I'll do that. Then we'll do a 3D one with the same paper just so that we're testing apples to apples. I also thought it would be interesting to do one of the cut and emboss also. So we'll do that. And these are kind of nice. There's always the option to cut it as just one piece or cut with the as a frame. And then I'll show you how to place it because you get like perfect placement so that it's nice and centered. So we'll do one of those. I'll cut that one out of black, and then I might do a second embossing with some specialty paper. Just some strips that I have, so we'll see. That's the stack of things that we can try out. So now let's look at the plate combination that we need to do this embossing, because it is going to be different to what we just used, which was for die cutting. So for embossing, what we want is let's start with the 3D one because that's the one that came with. So we just need A, we don't need B, the embossing folder with the paper inside, and then D. So let me get the D plate out. So that's this one. And so we have our 3D embossing folder. And got the paper inside. E, 3D is embossing 3D. So A, we can bring this out here for reference. So we have our A, the embossing folder, and D. I like to always send this through with the hinge of the embossing folder going through first. So let's put that through. And it's a little bit easier to this is a little bit more natural. You do have to put a little bit of effort to kind of hold it in place. So I kind of wish there was a suction cup at the bottom. I'm guessing there's a reason why there isn't, but it does help to stabilize things. Oh, look at that emboss. I didn't even spritz it with water. How pretty is that? So you can kind of see with the 3D embossing folder, you have multiple levels of that embossed design. So you can kind of see some areas are more raised than others. Like this is just barely raised, whereas this is very like coming out of the paper at you. But that's really pretty. I really love that. Well done. Did it curve my folder any? Just a smidge. Sometimes when there's a lot of pressure, what will happen is the roller is going across like this, so it's constantly applying pressure along this axis. And so it can have a tendency to kind of curve your plates or your embossing folder, or even sometimes your dies if there's too much pressure. Okay, so that was our 3D embossing. Let's check out the regular embossing just with a standard folder. So standard folder is A, B, our folder plus paper, and a C cutting plate. So this is the standard one that actually comes. I cut this strip to 3.5 inches, and it will just fit within this design here. Okay, so we do need a standard cutting plate. I'm going to use the clean one that's not been cut into, and I'll send all of this through. Let's see. I'm going to try to center this because some of it hangs off the platform sandwich. And is this the right combo? Oh, I picked up one too many plates. So don't force things through. If it's too thick and it doesn't feel like it'll go through, don't put it all through. So here we want A, B, your embossing, standard embossing folder, and C. That's much better. Okay. So it's a little bit hard to get it started because I feel like I have to hold it from back here just to make sure it starts to go through, but then I have to hold it at the top to really prevent it from lifting. So now you can see how the plates start to curve up. That's over time, that's kind of why you want to be rolling your plates and your sandwich through, flipping them back and forward so that it evens out over time. So this has a very, very slight curvature to it. So next time I run it through, I want to flip it upside down so that it curves back the other way. So now this is a standard folder. Let's see how it did. Now everything is going to be embossed. The design will all be either kind of the base paper or all raised to one level. So that's lovely. It's nice, even emboss, I think. Doesn't seem like there's some areas that got a deeper emboss than others. Yeah, that turned out good. Nice. Love it. Okay, next, let's do, that was the rounded one. I think the next ones are gonna do just great. So let's see. I have one more 3D and then I have one more straight or standard. Do that one. And then I want to do the cut and emboss as well. Okay, so let's do this one because this is also just a standard embossing folder. So it'll be the same sandwich that we just used. So A, B, and C. And I did flip my top cutting plate around so that it's gonna go through the other way. So let's just get that started. And So try to change things up. You know, roll towards you, roll away from you, use your left hand, use your right hand. Wear and tear on your body from crafting happens when you are doing the same repetitive motion over and over again. So if you find ways to kind of change things up a little bit, that's why sometimes I do like to try to rotate this way, because then I'm rotating left to right, right to left, you know, forwards, backwards. It's all different motions so that, you know, your joints and whatnot are being utilized in different ways, and hopefully it doesn't create like a repetitive stress strain on your body. This is completely straight, so it's just the right amount of pressure to get the effect that we want. So not too much pressure, not too little. There's beautiful, it's white on white, so it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that lovely emboss. So pretty. And I love a white on white embossing for for cards, especially clean and simple cards. It's a little bit of a cheat. So to get some texture without that blank white space of the card base. Okay, so this one's a 3D. So it's got a more intricate design to it. You've got a little bit of a basket weave, some florals. The 3D is different. It is, in terms of the plate combination, it's A, the folder, and D. So A, the folder, and D. So that's what we're going to send through. And just try to get it started here. And then I can hold it down. Now this is a little bit harder to do, but I am doing this with my non-dominant hand also. So that might be why, but it did go through. And this is so thick, it's not likely to bend or curve on you. But this hasn't bent, so that's just the right amount of pressure. If it was too much pressure, you would see this folder curve on you. Wow, look at that. That's really nice. I think it's a little bit light right here of an emboss. But so there might not be like equal pressure. This feels really, it could be the design, but this feels like a little bit flatter right here, or like right in the middle here. Although these areas look kind of okay if I'm looking at just straight up and down this column. So maybe it's the design. This looks a little bit, yeah, a little bit less embossed here. So it could just be that in the middle of the rollers, you don't get quite the same amount of pressure, but it's so subtle. I think I'm probably being a little bit nitpicky in that, but you can kind of see like off to the sides, there's so much detail here in that embossing. And then towards the middle here, see how there's not like the veins of the leaves, not quite as much detail there. So, still really beautiful though. Love that. Okay, that I feel did really well. So now let's look at a cut and emboss. So this is shown as a 3D embossing. So we're going to use this sandwich, even though there's dies in here. So let's see. And I'll do it both ways. So here you kind of can feel, especially once you put the die in, that it sort of nestles in. And then there's a little bit of, you can kind of wiggle it a little bit, but it does, there is a spot for it. It does nestle in. And similarly, you can put the inner die, the aperture, to cut out a frame. Or if you preferred and you're going to just layer right on top, you can nestle just the outline without the inner, and then you can die cut this like maybe from a different color and then layer on top. So this would be good for things like maybe you want to do a shaker card, for example, and you want that inner aperture cut out from the center. So this is more than what we need. We'll do that. And I'll fold this down. You could tape that in place, so it'll look like this, and you could tape it if you wanted to really make sure that it didn't budge, that it didn't go anywhere. This is a 3D folder, so I'm going to put that down, put the D plate on, or adapter plate on top, and feed this through. I'll go this way. And I'm just going to hold on to it, get it a little bit partially through, and then stabilize it from the top here. This is going through a lot more easily, but I am using my more dominant hand now. So, okay. So let's see if this cut. Look at that. Oh wow, so check that out. So see how it cuts and it did this emboss as well. So that's what it would look like if you just use the outline. And then you have this piece. Look at all that embossed around the edges, how it's like kind of dented in a little bit. So this is what it looks like if you use both dies and you cut the aperture out. So you can get a frame for your shakers, or you can get this full frame that then you can, you know, use a die to cut and put something on top. It's nice, got that really lovely postage edge border to it. So really, really fabulous. That, love that. And you have all that dimension, all the detail. This cut really perfectly. Yeah, I like this a lot. So now let's see, what did it do to our folder? It's a little bit curved, a smidge. See how it doesn't really lay flat anymore? That one wants to pop up a little bit, but not a ton. So I think with these 3D ones, you do need a little bit extra pressure to get it to cut really nicely. But you know, that's not going to hurt the folder any. That's just something to keep in mind. Now, what I want to show is, let's use this. So if we're going to die cut, now typically the magic mat is just going to replace whatever your cutting plate is. So if we are doing die cutting, it requires A, cutting plate, you're die cutting into it, and the C plate. So let's A, B. Let's use the magnetic side. So if you haven't, this is my first magnetic magic mat. On one side, this is self-healing. The magic mat is self-healing on this side. And then on this side, it's magnetic. So you can see the die will stick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these two as an aperture just to show the difference between like using the embossing folder and just positioning these and cutting, because you're not going to see the same sort of like detailed like embossed edge, I suspect, because I actually haven't done that before. So I'm going to use the same black cardstock, and I suspect this is going to cut beautifully. It's just that it won't be quite as dimensional. Oh, let me just cut a full strip. And then what I'm going to do also at the same time while we're at it, because this is magnetic, You shouldn't have to tape things down, but I'm just going to do my best to center. That's the other nice thing with having the folder, because it gets positioned perfectly so that it will be perfectly centered. But then while we're at it, let's also drop this in and see how this cuts, how well it cuts into the magnetic mat. And then we want our top cutting plate to complete the sandwich. So let's get this through and see how it does. All right. I don't know if you can see that. See how, oh, well, the plate starts to curve a little bit. So what it will tend to do is curve up. So the next time, like I said, just flip it, and then that way it curves up, but in the opposite direction. So let's see. Look at that. Drops right out. Beautiful job cutting the delicate. You can, none of that actually stuck in the die. Oh no, we had a little bit stick in the die, but you can just tap it out, use your pokey tool, use your all-in-one tool, weed all of that out. That went through nicely. Now let's look at this. Okay, so here's the difference. Okay, on the left is just positioning the dies and cutting them out together. On the right is using the embossing folder. See how much like of a difference you get just in terms of the detailing and the like the dimensionality of it, that extra little sort of crimped edge almost. It's just two different looks, but that's the reason to, you know, put it through the folder. Let's see how well I did eyeballing the center. I think I did pretty okay. Yeah, I did pretty good actually. I did really good. I just impressed myself. I did really good centering this. Look, it's like pretty much 100% match. Wow, look at that. I'm usually not all that great at eyeballing. And then keep in mind when you cut into the magnetic side, this is not self-healing. So if this gets cut into enough times to where maybe you're losing, you know, some pressure, then you might ultimately have to either flip to the other side and cut into that one, or replace it. The magic mats, generally, if you're just using it on the self-healing side, you might get scratches and stuff like that, and if you get paper embedded here, you can always soak it and clean it, wash it with some warm water. But it saves you from having to replace cutting plates, because over time, this is going to warp a lot. This might warp, but you can always use your heat gun, and that should flatten it back out. I've never had to really replace a magic mat, but I don't use it on a daily basis anymore. I will, however, probably start to use it more, this one anyways, with this specific machine. And I couldn't find a good example of a die that does like emboss details, like where you can run it through to emboss, but certainly you can do that and use the squishy mat. I just want to, while I have it here, let's just run like this. It's a very candy cane stripe-ish. So let me just put some specialty. This is the treasured cardstock. Just leftover little strips that I happen to have. And I just want to put this through and see how it looks on specialty paper. Usually embossing specialty papers it tends to look really nice. So we went B and C. So A, B, and C. And let me try to grab a C plate that, this one, that's not my cutting. I try only to cut into one clear cutting plate at a time so that the other one can stay nice and pristine. And then if I need to replace it, then I'll start cutting into this one and get a new one. Okay, so let's see. This is that same one. Oh, look at that. Now, let's try something. Let's put that another strip through. And one thing that you might find yourself needing to do is maybe you think that this should be able to get you like a more deep, like a deeper emboss. You can use this shim. So it's thin. It's just a bit of plastic, maybe mylar, I'm not sure. If you just put that between your, you know, A and B plates, it just helps to add just a smidge extra pressure, because the thicker this combination of things is, the more pressure gets exerted by the rollers onto the oh, this might be too thick, but I am putting it in at an awkward angle, so let's try this way. There we go. So, because it went through so easily that first time, that I kind of feel like it could probably take a little bit more pressure, and then we'll see if that helps to add more embossed detail. So I can compare this, which has the extra shim, to this one, which did not. So it kind of looks like, yeah, it's got a slightly deeper embossed. I think these were the same. Were they different? This might be a different cardstock. Let's run it through with this. Yeah, I didn't pick. Let's do apples to apples, because I think these two are the same mirror. So we'll do, that's not a fair comparison. It's two different cardstocks. So let's do this without the shim. We get a more fair comparison of the two. Just to show you, adding that extra shim, that's what that F piece is there for. It's just to, if you need a little bit of extra pressure, maybe your die didn't cut all the way through, maybe your embossing folder, you feel like you could get a little bit extra oomph. And if it's rolling through comfortably, like you're not having to really struggle to crank it through, then adding just that little bit, that little extra shim could definitely help increase the pressure a little bit. So there's the difference. This is without the shim, right is without the shim, left is with. Not too much of a difference, if I'm being honest, but it might just be the design. I mean, I can see a little bit, this might be a little bit of a stronger emboss, because you can tell that the paper is definitely curled more because there was more pressure applied to it. So it definitely did something. But if I didn't know and I had to look, I don't think I could tell a difference. But that extra shim might make a difference if you're die cutting, and maybe some parts don't die cut all the way through. Or maybe in that case of this 3D embossing folder, if I felt like maybe that could have embossed maybe a little bit more deeply, maybe throwing in the F, that extra shim, might have helped that to emboss a little bit more fully. So this is really, I really like this machine a lot. I think it performs really well, just on first impression. I like the size of it. I like the length of it. You can definitely fit a lot of dies on here, which is really nice because, you know, as I'm prepping for my videos and whatnot, I do like to try to die cut like as much as I can, all of those little pieces, to assemble things. And so it's kind of nice how long this is. So for a mini machine, it really does kind of pack a punch in that way, because most dies I find will go through this size plate. And it's really when I'm doing techniques, maybe trying to die cut an aperture through an A2 panel, that's when having a something like the mini Empress, which can fit a full A2 panel, that's when that becomes really helpful. And of course, there are many more embossing folders that are either your standard, A2 size or larger, like Spellbinders does the half letter, US letter size embossing folders, which I love. And I don't see a ton of companies other than Spellbinders doing these more narrow 3.5-inch wide ones. Maybe there are, and I just don't really know about them. But that is something to consider as well. So if you love your embossing and you have a lot of your standard size embossing folders, you might want to consider a larger machine so that you can really use all of the supplies that you have and not have to have so many like multiple machines that are super specialized. But what I love about this is the size of it, and it's convenient. It does fold up into this cute darling little machine, and it's really is like a mini me of the platinum machine in terms of the look. It looks like it has all the same amount of pressure. I feel like it has just the right amount of pressure so that you're not putting too much strain on yourself, your body, and not excessive amount of pressure on your plates, which means that this should over time last longer. What I'm going to do, that's just my initial first thoughts. What I'm going to do is try to use this as much as possible over the next few weeks. I do a lot of die cutting, so I can't imagine it's going to take me too long to come to a conclusion on how I feel about it. Certainly, a machine this size is not going to accommodate something like your glimmer or your butter press. For that, you're going to need at least a 6-inch opening. So I won't need to do any of that testing. I've been using the Sizzix Big Shot a lot for my die cutting. So far, loving it. Just a little bit quick update for you on that. I have also been using a ton the circular cutting plates, and I gotta say, I really like using the circular plates. Now these, just note, the circular plates that I've been using with my Big Shot, it's not the Sizzix one. It's the same size, but it is not the same. It's not by Sizzix. It's a off-brand one, and there's a small one as well, and I think I'm gonna just maybe try to use the small one on the Scout and just kind of see how that does. Why does this matter? So in theory, this should last a long time because you can really rotate it in all the directions, whereas this always has to go in this end or this end. So it's always going, through your machine like that. So it's always going to curve this way. Whereas a circular plate, your rollers can put direction in this way. The next time you go through, maybe you rotate it a little bit and it goes that way. You rotate it a little bit and it goes that way. So it's a little bit easier to provide even wear and tear because this can go in, every which, angle. And the rollers aren't always applying pressure kind of in the same direction. That's why these plates, your standard cutting plates over time, they curve because the rollers always put pressure this way. So you have to rely on flipping them back and forth to kind of bend it back. If it's curving too much like this, you want to send it through so that it starts to curve back up like that. So taking, the frowny face to a smiley face. And these, you can see I've used it a lot. It does, I don't think it really bends this. It's pretty straight still, because you don't even really have to think about it. You're just naturally going to toss it in at a different angle probably every single time. So there is that. So I'm kind of curious how this small one, if this will go through the scalp. And that could also extend sort of the longevity. If you just need to die cut like one or two little things, it's also easier to pass this through and then be done. You don't have to roll it back as a second pass. So that's the other thing that I've really been liking about using this, is that it's not quite half the size of the plate, but if you're just die cutting one little small thing, you're done and it's out the other side much quicker. This is like maybe 5 inches or so, and I think this one might be 3.5. So that does tend to speed up your process a little bit. So my plan is, as I mentioned, I'm going to be using this more. You'll probably start seeing it in videos. And as well, my hope is I'm actually going to do an update to my die machine comparison video. And I'm working also on a holiday gift guide recommendation. So kind of similar to my video where I talk about, what are the big ticket items that are worth it. I think my approach this year will be, if budget isn't an issue, what are the things that I feel are staples in my craft room. And then I think I'll do a version of a holiday gift giving where it's more, okay, if you have a friend you would love to see get into crafting, what are some great options just to get them started? So more of a beginner friendly, or if you yourself are getting into paper crafting, you don't know how much you're going to love this hobby, and so you don't want to go out and spend thousands of dollars, what are some good things to get started? Maybe your loved one, your wife, your husband, brother, sister, etc., mom, dad, maybe you just want to introduce them to a hobby and get them a few things to get them started, but have it be something that can grow with them if they continue to love the hobby. So I think I'm gonna approach my holiday gift giving guide video in those couple of ways, but that is going to be a future video, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for checking out my video today, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.